Hey everybody, it's Andy. We're here at beautiful Snow Valley, California because Scarpa was kind enough to send me a pair of their new F1 GT Alpine Touring boot. This is a new model for the 2022-2023 season, that's right now. And I thought we would compare them to my F1s. Alright, so as you can see, I've got one on each here. There's the GT, and that's the original F1 right there. Left and right. Okay, so let's talk. Let's kind of divide boots into, let's say, a free-ridey touring category, a light touring category, and then racing. Alright, racing would be like your Scarpa Alien series boots. Free ride would be the heavier stuff, like maybe what Lang makes. And then in this light touring category, you've got the F1. So kind of the interesting question off the bat is, where does the GT fit into that scheme? And I would say the GT is starting to borrow some of the Alien technology. I almost wish they'd called it the F1 Alien. That might have been interesting. So it's tilting more in the racing direction, but my Scarpa person was very clear it's not a racing boot. It's not that light. It is lighter than the F1. I didn't memorize this number. I'm thinking it's about 4 ounces lighter per boot. That may not sound like much, but it's a lot, especially per pair. I think you're getting like around 8 to 9 ounces lighter per pair. So that's getting to be significant. Now let's talk about the GT's real strength, which is its walk mode. When you pop it into walk, even compared to the F1, which is no slouch as a walker and climber, the GT is just so much freer and looser, bigger range of motion and less stiffness, less force required to move through your stride. That directly translates into climbing and walking comfort and efficiency. And on the uphill, I don't think there's any question the GT is a superior boot. It's lighter, and that walk mode is kind of dreamy, really. It's good enough. It's not like a GoPro update. It's a big difference. It's good enough to where you're going to say, hey, I think I want to be on this as my boot. So, obviously there's a catch, and the catch is what happens on downhill performance. So the GT works out to be about, I think it's 3 millimeters shorter, the actual shell size, in the same Mondo size. That's probably significant, especially if you're sized close originally in your F1. So for me, the 3 millimeter shorter shell is getting to be a little tight, not for downhill skiing, but for touring, I would be a little nervous. I might need to push out the big toe area a little bit. So be aware of that. You know, that's part of the way that the GT drops weight. It is a slightly smaller shell. There are also more significant cutaways. And one of the big changes in the shell is that there's no hard plastic tongue over the top of the boot where that instep buckle would be. Yeah, that's part of the news here. The GT has buckles instead of the BOA system and the Velcro strap of the original F1. You know, it's kind of a mixed bag. I was really big on the idea of sticking light buckles on the F1. I thought that would be kind of transformative. In practice, it doesn't seem to make that big of a difference. It lets you get things tighter for sure. But the interesting consequence of this, I'm going to look at it here real close. See the top of that boot there? There's no plastic there. That is a buckle basically on top of a little nylon liner, and then directly under that is my my inner liner. So the buckle is basically pressing directly on the GT's liner, And if that sounds a little bit uncomfortable, it is. It's definitely a harsher feel to have a buckle going straight onto a liner versus onto, normally it would be the outer shell of the boot. That's consequential in terms of feel. It gives the boot a little bit harsher of a feel. It's also consequential in terms of performance. So you're probably wondering which one's stiffer, right? And I would say they're actually very equivalent in stiffness. The lighter F1 GT really not giving up a lot in terms of stiffness. In fact, subjectively, you might even find it a little stiffer than the original F1 because it's not as progressive. It's got more of a hard hit right off the bat on your shin, and that subjectively sort of makes it feel stiffer, I think. But let's move on to downhill skiing, because that's where the original F1 just really outclasses the GT. It really does. You know, again, a lot of this is subjective, but just in terms of the flex, the feel, the comfort, the quality of the turns I feel like I'm making, they're all better on the original F1. I feel not as comfortable on the GT. Is it a giant difference? No, but it's enough to where, as someone who cares about the feel of the ski, I'm not as happy with the GT going downhill. That's especially true on this hard kind of, you know, man-made, packed, we'll call it powder snow. On your backcountry snow, on softer snow, that difference is probably going to disappear, or at least be much less noticeable. So maybe the ideal GT skier might be kind of like a Wasatch powder guy, you know, somebody who likes to do powder laps, make your figure eights. You don't want a lot of an approach. You like to park your car right at the edge of the snow, and you like the extra or the less weight of the GT so that you can get a couple extra figure eights in per day. I think the boot's going to suit you really well. You know, longer all day, maybe it's not as comfortable. Well, it's definitely not as comfortable as the original F1. So for the more mountaineering-oriented guy who doesn't need that slightly less weight, you know, the original F1 is still an outstanding boot, and actually feels kind of cozy on my foot in comparison to that harsher pressure point of the buckle directly on the liner. That is the weakness, I think, of the GT. All right, so let me see. Have I missed anything here? The headline story, I think, is the GT's uphill performance. That's where it gets the nod. And the original F1's downhill performance, where I find it to be clearly the stronger choice. So, yeah, you have to make a choice. There is a trade-off here, one way or the other. You're getting uphill chops or downhill. Can't have everything, I guess. But, you know, I'm pleased enough with both boots to say either way you're getting a terrific boot in what we're going to call this light touring category. Not the race crazy ski-mo guys, you know, who are really just interested in surviving going downhill. They're wearing like slippers with some kind of buckle and tech attachment system. Not the free ride guys, obviously, who are driving big skis, who want, you know, want their alpine performance. This is in that light, you know, more willing to compromise category. Either one of these boots, if they work with your foot, is an outstanding choice. I'm happy with both, and it's what I expect from Scarpa. They do this kind of thing really well. I would expect we're going to see some improvements in the GT as time passes, so keep an eye on it if you don't feel like it's ready quite yet, and hopefully we will see you out there on the hill. All right, that's it from beautiful Snow Valley, California. I'm going to go have some fun now.